Hi everyone, my name is Delilah. I used to just hate dirt. If you started using sanitizers and wearing masks a couple of years ago, I've been doing it since I was born. My relatives say it's because I'm too squeamish, and it got in the way of my life. If you think that my mother is a cleaner, that she handled everything thoroughly when I was little, no, she didn't. For as long as I can remember, I was the one who cleaned and washed everything, now and then. At school, my day didn't start until I cleaned my desk, pens, books, and even notebooks. I always wore a mask, sat in class with it, and changed it every 2 hours. I didn't share things with anyone, sat at my desk by myself, and required airing out the room before class. Maybe that's why I didn't have any friends. One summer, my parents sent me to summer camp. They thought I needed it for socialization. Even though I was against it, my opinion was not taken into account. Just don't brush everything off, or they'll think you're above them. People don't like that. I don't know where you're coming from. Your dad and I aren't as clean as you are. Anyway, everything will be fine. The main thing is not to clean up too much. Just be easy and everything will be fine. Try not to fight like you do at school, proving you're always right, okay? Remember what the psychologist said? Try to fit into society. Not all people are so clean. It's worth accepting that fact. After that conversation, I went to bed, and then my adventures began. It was some kind of nightmare. First of all, there were about 12 guys I didn't know on the bus. All the way, they were singing songs, sharing sandwiches from home, and shaking hands as they got to know each other. Ew, I said to myself. I sat down in the far corner and pretended to be asleep, pulling my mask over my face. Just the sight of them made me feel bad. I didn't want to see or think about the germs being transmitted. And then the worst part began, the girls' common room. There were 4 people in each. I begged for a personal room, but they just laughed at me. Then I treated my part with sanitizer. The girls dropped their things and went to the river to swim, and I said that I'd stay and clean. I armed myself with the cleaning supplies I'd taken in advance from home and scrubbed my part of the room. 2 hours later, there was a knock at the door. It was the curator. He invited me to dinner. I finished my work and went to the dining room, where I saw the shared plates and cups. I almost threw up. The supervisor came up to me and asked why I wasn't eating, but I refused to say. And my roommate Brooke declared to the entire dining room that I just didn't feel too bad about eating with everyone else. "How is she any better than us? Who do you think you are?" came the shouting from the crowd. I tried to calm everyone down by saying, "I just can't eat here, I feel bad." But the guys didn't get it. They said I thought I was the coolest and that people like me didn't belong here. I came out of there and went to my room, lay down on my bed, and picked up a book. My first day had already been terrible, but I didn't know then that that wasn't the end. As soon as I closed my eyes and fell asleep, I immediately woke up to find my mouth covered, my hands and feet tied, and carried outside. My roommates were standing over me. Believe it or not, I didn't even know their names, but as it turned out, they were very offended by my behavior and decided to teach me a lesson. When they untied my mouth, I immediately started shouting that they had no right, that I would immediately complain to the curator and they would be prosecuted. And then the curator came out of the crowd. "Is this about me?" What? What the hell? Why are you all conspiring? What did I ever do to you? Okay, I promise not to say anything to anybody if you let me go now. I'll go home early in the morning. No one will notice. Just leave me alone. Why do you think that because you're richer than all of us, you have the right to express your squeamishness so openly? Don't you know the laws of the pack? What laws? If you live in a pack, all yours becomes ours, and all ours is yours. And you immediately thought of yourself like a princess, that you're better than us. I tried to justify myself by saying that I had no such thoughts, but these people wouldn't listen to me. All the words flew past their ears. They put me on my knees right on the dirty ground, then opened a bottle of juice. They all drank a bit, then handed the can to me and told me to drink it. I resisted for a long time. Then the curator took my suitcase and unloaded the things from there. They took out a box of chlorine and dumped it right in my stuff. "No, chlorine corrodes!" I yelled. They gave me a bottle and told me to drink it. In tears, I drank a few gulps, but I immediately threw up right on the curator's shoes. He got angry and slapped me across the cheek. Then they dragged me to the bathroom and they scooped water out of the toilet and poured it right on me. "What do you all want with me?" I yelled. The curator said they needed me to stop thinking I was better than any of them. I saw a mop in front of me, stood up sharply, and grabbed it. Then I tried to hit the curator with it, but I slipped on the wet floor and the mop flew out and hit the curator right in the eye. He screamed in pain and started running from side to side. The other guys tried to grab me, so I ran out into the street, grabbed some soap, and slammed the door behind me. It turned out that I'd pinched someone's arm, and I heard a crunch. A broken hand. I ran further down the street, where my neighbors were waiting for me. They blocked my path and told me that if I took even one more step, I'd pay for it.
"You're all sick!"
I shouted and ran the other way. The girls chased after me. I'd never run so fast in my life. I managed to jump over the fence, but they grabbed me by my pants and pulled me down.
"Ah!"
I yelled. I was thrown to the ground, and my roommate started kicking my body. It was a nightmarish pain. Somewhere in the distance, I noticed a lady walking. I yelled,
"Mom, I'm here!"
That helped distract the girls. I rushed out of there, threw soap in one of the girls' faces, and ran into the canteen, where I hid under one of the tables. They came running after me and turned on the lights. Meanwhile, I'd managed to grab a frying pan and clutched it in my hand. As soon as they found me, I got up, turned the table over, and hit my neighbor with a frying pan, and she fell unconscious. But behind me, another grabbed my hair, and a third was coming toward me, preparing her fists. I stepped on the leg of the second one, then grabbed a plate from the table and smashed it on her head, while she sat down on the floor and couldn't come to her senses. Then I kicked the third neighbor running at me. I miscalculated my strength, and she flew out of the open window. It was good that we were on the first floor. I jumped out the window next door and ran toward the room. I locked the door and called my mom and 911. The guys tried to break down the door, but I propped it up with a closet, dragged it over, and locked the door, and blocked the window with it. Finally, there was silence. All of them were gathered at the door, and the curator and my roommates, and everyone was with them. They were breathing loudly, threatening to get at me. I sat on the floor, covered my face with my hands, and shouted that I didn't understand what was going on, that I wanted to go home, and that I hadn't done anything bad to them. They weren't listening. They were standing there outside, breathing. I was scared. I was terribly tired. Then I opened my eyes and found that I was lying in my room, that I was home and that it was nighttime outside. My mother was right there, stroking my head and asking me if I was okay. But where are all the people? What people? From the camp. My dear, you must have had a bad dream. You're going to camp tomorrow. You haven't been there yet. Oh, Mom, I'm not going, okay? I think my cleanliness fanaticism will be misunderstood by the kids. I'm not going anywhere. Well, what about trying to make friends? I will, but not there, okay? Mom agreed, and I took a sigh of relief. Mom was very concerned about my lack of friends, but I was just worried about the insanitary and bacteria. After a couple of months, I found a way out and got a part-time job with a cleaning company. At first, my mom was against it, but I explained that I enjoy cleaning and tidying things. Besides, the pay wasn't bad. The interesting thing is that at this new job, I met all the guys from my nightmare dream. Only in life, they were much easier, and they also loved order and cleanliness in the house. After a few weeks, we became friends and created our own community of cleaners. We went to each other's houses and cleaned for 7 to 8 hours straight. Yeah, imagine that kind of thing happening too. How do you spend time with your friends, and how do you feel about cleaners like us? Can it seem too arrogant?
Hi, my name is Michelle. I look like an ordinary person, and really, everything would be fine if it weren't for my allergy to milk. Yes, I have lactose intolerance, and I've had it since birth. Imagine how I used to live. When I couldn't speak, but already suffered from allergies? It was terrible. In short, the day I was born was unfortunate from the very beginning. I mean, my mother is very sensitive, and she pays attention to all sorts of signs of fate. On the morning of May 16th, she went into labor. My mother planned everything in advance, prepared, her water broke, and she calmly called my father to come home from work and take her to the hospital. After leaving work, Dad found that his car was taken away by a tow truck, allegedly because of incorrect parking, although he always left the car there. On the way home in a taxi, he lost his glasses. They fell out of his jacket, and after he arrived home late, an angry mother in pain yelled at him, and the contractions intensified. They barely caught the car on the road, forgot the bag with the documents, and somehow arrived at the hospital. Already at registration, they asked for documents that were left at home. Mom already said that they would be in trouble, but no one listened to her. As a result, my father went back for the documents, and my mother was sent to give birth. While Dad was stuck in traffic in a taxi, Mom started giving birth. My dad arrived at the moment when everything was over, although it was planned that he would be there and shoot everything on video. Mom was angry, but happy. It seemed that all these ridiculous failures were really just superstition. But then, it turned out that these were really signs. A couple of days after I was born, the doctors noticed that I was screaming like a madman, and it wasn't that I was hungry. I was examined for a long time, then they took some tests, and it turned out that I was lactose intolerant. Yes, if you didn't know, it happens. Roughly speaking, I'm allergic to milk, and not only to it, but to everything that contains lactose. Cheese, some sweets, cottage cheese, sour cream, yogurts, and everything like that. It's sad, because from the very beginning, I lived and ate with restrictions. Many products I could not eat. Even if the dish has at least a small dose of lactose, I would get stomach disorders. To avoid sitting on the toilet for a good amount of time with a hell of a stomachache, I avoided milk. In principle, when you grow up, you get used to what you can eat and what you can't. My parents controlled my diet until I learned to do it myself. Although it wasn't always possible to keep me from eating cheesecake, yes, the name speaks for itself. When I went to school, my mother warned all the teachers to control my food, and my mother always wrapped my lunch with her so that I didn't eat anything extra. So I grew up, and everyone got used to my features, but then we abruptly moved to another area. It so happened that the house we rented, the owners decided to sell, so we had to urgently look for another place to stay. We chose the area where my father worked so that it would be closer for him to travel. The first days after moving seemed too busy. We ate fast food and soda because there was no time to cook. When I arrived at the new school, my mother forgot to wrap my lunch, so I went without it. There was a birthday party at the school that day. After school, the tables in the middle of the corridor were covered with various goodies. I was so hungry that I grabbed sandwiches on plates and ate a few, and then washed it all down with some cool cocktail. At this time, a guy named Jim came up to me. He met me by offering me some more skewers to eat. He said the sandwiches I ate were made by him. Despite their simple composition, they were amazing. It's all about the dough. I made it with milk and added cheese. He said, "What? There's milk?" I shouted to the whole corridor. He looked at me in surprise. Then I felt a sharp pain in my stomach. I twisted like a hook, dropped the food from my hands, knocked over my cocktail glass, and winced in pain. Jim got scared. He started asking what was wrong with me, and I couldn't say anything, just tried to ask where the toilet was. When he understood me, it was too late, and I felt like I was starting to fart all over the hall. The fumes were coming out of me at such a volume that I thought my jeans were going to tear. I kept walking down the hall toward the bathroom, while Jim supported me and my bag. I could see how embarrassed he was to go with me, and I felt even worse because I was new, and now everyone would remember me as Farting Michelle. I made my way to the bathroom and did my business. I was gone for 40 minutes. I called my mom and asked her to pick me up. I took my medicine at home and it went away. But I couldn't go back to school. It's embarrassing. That's how my first day went. My mother persuaded me not to get upset, and she went to school with me the next day and talked to the teacher and the principal. She apologized to me for not cooking lunch and promised that it would not happen again. After this incident, I decided to cook my own lunch now. Maybe now it's my responsibility to myself. No, I didn't change schools after that day. But I didn't have much of a reputation. Of course, It was creepy to go to places where people throw toilet paper or a carton of milk at your back every day. But Jim stood up for me every day now. That was nice of him, yes. We became good friends. It turns out that he dreams of becoming a chef, but with a friend like me, he now learned to make dishes without milk and cheese. Isn't that cool? Do you guys have any allergies? Or maybe one of you also has the same intolerance as me. Share your stories in the comments, and I will be happy to read each one.